Welcome back to Blue Wave Pod. I'm your host, Eric Heffinger.
And I'm Soham Manik.
All right, right before this episode, almost didn't make this episode, we had a family incident.
Oh, no. Oh, no. What happened?
Okay, so this, I have three kids. I have my oldest, the middle, and the baby. So Braden's the oldest, Eleanor's the baby. It involves those two right now. So Braden's had a great first couple days at school. Just wonderful. Wonderful. He's done a great job. He's been very responsible, remembering all the things he has to do, doing the work. It's been good. Compliment him on that. He says, right after I compliment him, that he's going to go upstairs to the bathroom. He goes upstairs to the bathroom, and he's up there for quite a while. While he's up there, my daughter Eleanor, who is 8 months old, decides that she's going to have the largest, most massive poop explosion that you can imagine. And it is oozing out of everywhere, and she is covered with it. So my wife and I are doing this weird sort of, like we're carrying furniture, half carrying the baby each, so we don't have to put the baby against us because she's so covered with poop, carrying her.
Can I just say, you're making parenting just sound just...
Oh, it gets better.
Like a dream.
Hold on. It gets better. So we're trying to carry her upstairs to the bathtub because we decided that it's just better to go to the bathtub and give her a bath. It is so gross, right? and we don't want her to touch us. And then Braden's in the bathroom. So we're like, Braden, you got to hurry up and get out. He's like, I'm going to the bathroom. Like,
oh,
okay.
No.
So we're like standing there for a second, like, Braden, what are you doing? We don't hear anything. It's time to get out. I need your help. I'm like, Braden, are you kidding me? No, you need to just like get off the toilet and get out of here. I gotta get in the tub. And he's like, no, I need somebody to help me, please. So we find a way to Ashley to hold her without getting poop all over. I go in there, and my son, we have this standalone mirror with these like adjustable hooks on the side that you could tilt the mirror, right? It's as tall as an adult person, and it's not attached to the wall mirror. He had taken the string, the elastic string from his sports shorts, and he had tied it one to each side, left and right, at the mirror where you adjust this. But those were about his head level on this mirror, okay? And so that he had double, triple, quadruple knotted these damn things and stretched them so freaking far that he couldn't untie them. He had tied himself to the sides of the mirror, and he couldn't get away. So when he moved, this giant mirror was falling on top of him. And because the string was like at his head level, he also couldn't get the pants. He couldn't get out of his own damn pants because he stretched the string so tight that he was stuck in his pants holding up this giant mirror that he was now attached to, and he couldn't untie it because the mirror was falling on him. And he had like, it was so freaking stretched, he couldn't get the knots out of it. So I had to, while my wife's holding this poopy baby, I'm having to one arm hold the kid while I hold the mirror up and put my foot and other arm on it and pull him out of his own pants to rip him off this falling down mirror on top of him.
Oh my God.
And his reason why I did it, I don't know. So yes, that's what parenting is. that's my story about all of parenting.
Well, to be fair, I'm pretty sure, isn't there a fairy tale where you spin around in the mirror and you enter some other dimension? Maybe he was just trying to do that. It sounds kind of reasonable to me.
Sure, we use the strings from our pants to do that, right? I don't know what that has to do with the show, but that happened just moments before we decided to go into this recording of this interview. And spoiler alert, we recorded the interview before we did the intro.
Yeah, we'll transition in.
Transition is we talked to Wade Munday, and it has nothing to do with my son's pant mirror incident.
To be fair, Braden does remind me a lot of America right now. We're hanging on. We're trying to get out.
We need Dad to come save us with one arm.
But he's busy.
He's busy holding a poopy baby.
It's just a mess. But luckily we have people like Wade Munday who are running for office.
This is not the intro he thought he was going to get.
But actually he has a few kids of his own, so I think he'll appreciate it.
Right. So Wade Munday is running for the 25th Senate District in Tennessee. And what stood out to us was we want to talk about immigration. Well, he is the executive director of Justice for Our Neighbors, which is a group that focuses on providing affordable, high quality immigration legal services for immigrants, right? But it's very faith based as well. So we want to talk to him, one, about the immigration issue, and two, about how faith plays into politics here, because it seems very much like the Republicans are bogarting the conversation on what it means to be a Republican.
I haven't heard that word in a long time. Nice. Also, I mean, it's completely true. And the good thing about Wade is he's in such an interesting spot right now. You know, he's in Tennessee. He's in a rural area that's been red for a long time. He's got this very strong Christian background, a very almost what people would say on paper looks like a Republican background, but he's a Democrat. He is a fighter for social justice, has been in his career and still is. And he's out there sort of co-opting that message that Republicans have held for so long and saying, no, let me just tell you what my beliefs are, my values and my morals. And hey, guess what? It lines up pretty well with Christian values and morality.
I'm here today with Wade Munday, who is running for the 25th Senate District in Tennessee. Wade, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Tell me a little bit about your district in Tennessee. You're not too far outside of Nashville, right?
No, it's, as you can imagine, rather gerrymandered district from the last redistricting cycle. But it's 5 rural counties that ring Davidson County, which is where Nashville, the capital of our state, is. About 35 miles north of there is Springfield, Tennessee. And my hometown, my father's hometown, it's rural, small town Tennessee, surrounded by soybean farms and tobacco farms. And as you go west and southwest, you come to the 4 other counties in the district: Cheatham County, Dixon, Hickman, and Humphreys counties. They all have very unique characteristics. Some are on the river, some are farmland, and all of them have just beautiful, charming, small Tennessee towns, and all within less than an hour's drive of Nashville, which is a pretty popular spot right now.
So how are you feeling? You're getting to the end of August now. You're about 2 months away from Election Day. How's it looking on the ground?
I feel great. I think we've had a lot of success already. There's a lot of work to be done on the ground, and even more so beyond the election. There's a lot of work to be done in our country and in our state. And so that's what I'm looking more towards. But what I'm hearing on the ground is that people are responding well to our campaign. Other campaigns around our state have a lot of momentum. And particular to my race, I think that we have a great opportunity to unseat a lesser known Republican state senator, an incumbent, and really shake things up in Tennessee.
So tell us about what drove you to run in the first place. I mean, we saw that you were endorsed by Run for Something, which I think a lot of people know about now, getting a lot of first-time people to run for office. And you're one of those. What drove you to do it?
A sense of personal responsibility and duty. My father was a Marine, is a Marine, and he instilled in me a passion for public service. I grew up in Boy Scouts, and I'm an Eagle Scout, and have gone beyond the years of when I was embarrassed to tell my friends and colleagues that I'm an Eagle Scout. It's something that I'm really proud of. And it's what drove me to run this year, is a commitment to serving my country and serving my community. Also, seeing what was happening nationally, I don't think anyone was satisfied with the nominees of either party. And I was satisfied with our party's nominee, but I know that there are several people who disagree with me. And at the end of the day, when I look around my community, I see that there are good, honest, hardworking people on both sides of the aisle who never run for anything. And I know I'm not a perfect candidate, but I know that I can bring all of those good qualities of my friends and neighbors to the table and hopefully represent them in a way that we haven't seen from our current elected officials. And that's why I started this campaign about a year ago.
One of the reasons we want to talk to you is because of your work outside of the campaign, actually, and that's as executive director of Tennessee's Justice for Our Neighbors. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what that group does?
I would be glad to. I am very fortunate to be the executive director of this nonprofit organization. It's provided me with skills relative to being a business owner. I have to make a payroll every month, and I have to make sure that the lights are turned on. I also have to manage a profit loss bank statement and manage our finances responsibly, which is important for any elected official. But what's really exciting about the work that we do is between the noise of the current immigration debate, there's a solution, and we are the solution. There are hardworking, dedicated humanitarians, attorneys, volunteers in Nashville, Tennessee, who are helping immigrants who have a legal pathway to remain in the United States, but they don't have the resources, they don't have the attorneys, and they don't have the knowledge of our current very complex, very misguided immigration laws. And so what they do day in and day out is they meet with young people, they meet with mothers who have been victims of domestic violence and their children, they meet with victims of religious persecution, and they've survived these terrible atrocities only to make it to the United States, perhaps to be with family members, perhaps just because it's the only place where they could turn. And they have nothing. What we can offer them is an attorney. And by getting on the right side of the law, by doing everything lawfully, they can finally find freedom. They can get a job. They can go to school. And it dramatically changes their lives. Changes our communities, too, for the better. And so I'm very proud and fortunate of the work that our attorneys do. It's a small office, but annually we see about 600 people who have a pathway to staying in the United States. And we can provide that. We can be that doorway to America for them.
But I'm reading an article here from the Tennessee Star, which looks like it's top notch. It says that you're helping MS-13 members come into the country here. This is a complete hack job of a website that's it's attacking you and your organization. And how do you fight against this type of message that's out there? That you're giving help to these people seeking asylum in the United States, but then suddenly they have no examples of you ever helping an MS-13 member, but suddenly you're connected to them somehow.
One of the greatest dangers to public safety is a foolish politician or a foolish political hack who thinks that they understand a problem. They wouldn't know MS-13 if they walked in their front door. And what we see daily is from working with the FBI, from working with local law enforcement, police chiefs and sheriffs, is that there are people who have been victimized by MS-13 who can provide critical information in keeping our community safe from those gang members and keep our society safe from them. And so if we ostracize those helpers, if we ostracize the woman who's been serially assaulted by a gang member who comes forward and says, I want you to put these guys away. I want to keep my children safe and my neighbors safe. If we lump them in with MS-13, that's the greatest danger to public safety I could ever imagine. And so what the current presidential administration has done and what some of these low-level political hacks have done is misconstrued the issue to such a point where vulnerable people who have valuable information that could keep themselves safe and our community safe are going further into hiding. They're putting themselves at risk. And frankly, it puts our law enforcement officers at risk. And it's by no fault of these vulnerable people. The fault lies directly on people who don't know what they're talking about. And so I think it's foolhardy for anyone to just for a political hatchet job, try to say that these human beings who have vast knowledge of gang members and MS-13, just because of the communities where they were born and raised, should then be kicked out of our country. It's equivalent to the Muslim ban, which there are Muslims who have come into our country and helped our military understand ISIS and the inner workings of the Taliban. And our military leaders know how important those resources are for our national security. The same way there are immigrants in our communities that help law enforcement. And I have the support of police chiefs and sheriffs throughout our community who say, no, this isn't really the problem that we should be talking about. There are meth labs and trailers where children are dying because they blow up. And that's just not what we hear from the other side.
Yeah, it really gets down to the otherizing of people, right? I mean, it seems so easy these days. I know it has in the past too, but we can feel it more these days where there's like a tangible fear that people have of whether it's Muslims or African Americans or immigrants coming in, Mexican immigrants. I mean, how do you fight that? It seems like your organization at least uses empathy to at least connect with individuals and connect them to the community. But we don't see that on a national level. All we see is fear. How do you fight those types of tactics?
Well, actually, I'm going to jump in here real quick. It's not just on a national level; it's on a local level too. I recently was appointed to my city council, and there was a debate about installing a bike trail next to the road, and the first complaint that came up from one of the very conservative members was he believed that it would become a terrorist target to plow down people on bikes. And I'm in a small town, and it's very fear-based, right? I think fear-based seeps into a lot of Republican politics, local and national. How do you fight that?
Yeah, I personally try to avoid saying that individuals are afraid of Muslims or immigrants or whatnot. I don't think that they're willing to accept that. And if they're not willing to accept that, then that's cut off the debate entirely. If I'm trying to approach someone who has some different perspectives on immigration than I do, I want to listen to them. And the same way that our attorneys, spend hours with their clients and they make a difference in their lives, one client at a time, 1 hour at a time. It's the same way in our communities. I've got to sit down with people and have an honest, knowledgeable, informed debate with them, and try not to assume that it's done out of fear. I do think that that's part of it. But when I'm talking to someone one-on-one, I try to understand their perspective, and I try to just listen to them and give them the information that I have. I'm fortunate to be in this position because I have dramatic stories of heroic people from around the world who are making our country safer and greater because of their contributions. And I can tell you to a person, anytime that I talk to them about immigration, and I don't mention that I think that they're afraid, or I don't mention that I think that they're wrong, but if I just highlight those stories of true heroes, a mother who escaped a violent husband in Mexico by putting her children on her back and coming to live with her sister. She protected her family in order to come to the United States. Or a sheriff south of the border who survived an assassination attempt, picked up his family and fled to live with his brother in Smyrna, Tennessee. A father who was a Christian worshiping in his home church in Africa, who fled on foot and was shot by border guards, who's now living and working here in the United States, desperate to bring his children over here. These stories are dramatic, but they're also a reminder of who we are. And I think if we're reminded of our history, it's not one distinct race, religion, or creed, but we are many things as Americans. And I think a healthy respect and reverence for history is what our country and our communities need most right now.
Well, so, I mean, first of all, those stories are very powerful. We talk a lot about how storytelling can be a great tool to convince people of your argument instead of just relying on facts and figures. But it's also important to talk about those facts, figures, and objectively about, when we're dealing with people who I would love to sit down at a table. And this is what I struggle with, right? I would love to sit down at a table with somebody and have that type of open dialogue and conversation and respectfully disagree on certain issues, which you absolutely can do in a debate like immigration. But there's a certain segment that's getting more and more fire and really kind of growing in a strange way, especially led by this president, that talks about it in such ways that you can't really even have that conversation. I mean, we're talking about somebody and people now who call Mexican immigrants animals, and Muslims, creatures out there and rats out there. So, I mean, I would love to have that, but my fear is that that type of conversation still happens, and it's great that it does, but it's happening less and less.
Right. I think you're right. And when you're in an environment of a political rally or locally at a county fair, you're not always going to have that somber, sober, reasoned conversation. And so you do the most good you can where you can. And, if I can convince one reasonable person at a coffee shop while 5 people are screaming at me at a county fair, then I'm going to call that a win, because I know that there are good people around the world who do want to see positive change. And, in the end, I do think that the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice, and it may have a temporary dip right now, but I'm confident that things will be different. The pendulum always swings back the other way.
I want to change subjects a bit, but it doesn't change too much from what you're talking about right now. You have a master's in divinity from Vanderbilt University. When I look at your campaign literature, stuff online, the videos, and whatnot, I see a fair amount to talk about your religion as a Christian. You're a Sunday school teacher, it says, and when we think traditionally in politics right now, when we think of Christians, it automatically goes to evangelicals that extremely support Trump. On the campaign trail, do you get any pushback as saying that you're a Christian but that you don't align yourself with the Republican Party?
No, I think most people are kind of surprised by it. I had one woman at the Robertson County Farm Bureau last Monday night who said, "Oh, I read your stuff. You should be a Republican." But if she really listened to me, I don't think she would believe that after my speech that night. And it's true. I don't think that any one political party has a stranglehold on a religion. I think that we must have a separation of church and state, and we must have a separation of our political parties and religious ideals as well. So, my faith, I came by it honestly, sitting on hard wooden pews of a Southern Baptist church, and then joined several other denominations as I was on my journey to find out what I truly believed, and to this day have a very close and personal relationship in my faith, and I take it very seriously, and so I try not to wear it on my sleeve or say that the things that I believe in a political environment are morally greater than what someone else believes. But my faith definitely informs some of the things that I do. One of my favorite books of the Bible is the book of Amos, which this poor shepherd from Tekoa is defending the poor against horrible abuses by the leaders of Israel. And so his message from God is don't oppress the poor, don't oppress the widow. And I think that we live in a country right now that has beaten up on poor people and immigrants for so long. We've heard them, called takers and entitled people. But no, there are a lot of people who I have served alongside who are just struggling to get by in America. And it's a horrible shame and injustice if we would try to hold them back from success in any way. So my faith informs my politics. That's my favorite book of the Bible. That might be as much religion as you'll get from me on the campaign trail, but I do get very animated about that because social justice is something that is deeply ingrained in the culture at Vanderbilt Divinity School, and social justice is what drives me to be involved in politics at all, so in public service at all.
I agree with you. I myself am a Christian and a Democrat, and when I read the things that Jesus said, I have a hard time picturing them with a lot of the Republican policies in loving your neighbor no matter what, not judging them based on who they are, their sins. There's so many verses in there that talk about things that the Democrats seem to stand for. And what really confuses me is how the Democratic Party let the Republicans become so the Christian party, it seems like. And I feel that that's scaring some people away from the faith. So I guess my question is, as a Christian on the campaign trail, what do you think other Christians on the campaign trail should do to alter that message, to let Christians know that they do actually have an option?
Be genuine. I think what the Republicans began or what they maybe adopted from the moral majority of the 1970s, was this posture that I am a moral person, therefore I have moral policies. And I would like to flip that upside down and say, I'm not necessarily a moral person. I'm a human being capable of both good and bad. But what I believe in are moral policies. And so I think that authenticity is what people around the country really want out of elected officials. Say that you're a fallen person. Say that you're just a normal human being that has made mistakes in their life, and move on. But adhere to policies that are informed by your faith or by your just common sense of decency and morality, and let that policy guide you. Not this idea that you're a moral person, therefore it follows that whatever policy you propose is good. And that's what I think people are probably looking for out of their elected officials, especially these days.
It boggles my mind so much. I keep going back to this. When I think of a quality Christian, I think of Jimmy Carter and how frugal he was and how much he helps the poor, and he doesn't weigh on the riches and whatnot. And I can't wrap my head around the fact that so many Christians out there are like, yeah, Donald Trump, that is what we want as the leadership of this. It just doesn't fit. He doesn't seem to exude anything that the Bible says that you should be humble, right? That you should help people in need. So I think Christianity as a whole really needs to jump into that conversation and say, hey, we shouldn't just align ourselves with one party. We need to have this debate as well. And I don't see many Christians having that debate.
Can I interject with something?
Yeah,
how much do you think this is actually about race at the end of the day and not religion? Because we talk about Christians being the party of the Republicans, but I don't think that many Black Christians are party of the Republicans.
This is true.
Hispanics are necessarily in the Republican Party. I mean, it seems to be very
especially
much
after this last one.
But it just seems to me that when we deal with it, it almost seems like a cover for what's really happening out there. And that's people saw Donald Trump as a champion of a white America that they really missed and that they saw slipping away. And they can tie it to religion and kind of use all of that as we're losing a culture instead of saying we're, losing our racial identity in a bit of a way. And that's what scares us more than anything.
Yeah, but they advertise it as Christian, do they not?
I mean, that's just, isn't that so much? I mean, that's just, it's so much easier to swallow if you say we want to save Christianity than, we want to save the white race. I mean, I think I'm not saying that people aren't genuine when they believe it, but I mean, it's clear that there's this huge divide now between Christian values and morality and the Republican Party, like you were just discussing, yet they still have a lot of support. And there has to be a reason for that. And I'm not buying that it's genuine religion.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a subtext to the slogan, Make America Great Again. What I've posited in some speeches to folks around my community is that what was so great about 1950 for an African-American schoolgirl, separate was not equal. And what was so great about America, in 1856. So that subtext is there. I think that there are people who might be willfully ignorant of that subtext. And so in that, they might be genuinely concerned about the direction of our country. And, things have changed quite a bit in the last 10 years. And so because I live in this community, which is rural, and it's, my parents are both Republicans and they both voted for Donald Trump. And so, I have to have a little bit of sympathy for that. And maybe sympathy is the wrong word, but I think I have a little bit of understanding about it. I don't agree with it. I disagree with it wholeheartedly. And I do believe that subtext is there, that it is an element of racism. And just because you say that there's an element of racism to someone's political belief or the way they voted, that doesn't mean that they're a Klansman. That doesn't mean that they're a horrible human being. Race plays an important part in our lives in America. And I think we do need to have those honest debates about race. and particularly for white Americans, where we failed to acknowledge fully what's happened in these small communities where you can see the dividing line between the white and the black neighborhoods. It's the railroad tracks. And that's generations of poverty that stemmed from a really racist system.
Yeah, and Wade, we're so happy you're there leading the conversation. I mean, we can just tell that you're so genuine, and to have somebody like you, at least out there listening to both sides, that's so valuable to the Democratic Party. So thank you for running. Good luck. We hope you keep in touch and let us know how it goes.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity, and thank you for what you do, highlighting candidates around the country.
If the Democrats want to compete in rural areas, I really, truly believe we have to become the big tent party. And I think that means we have to talk about religion more and involve that in our politics. We can't just ignore it.
You're 100% right. I mean, it's not just about ignoring it, but it's also, we can't be antagonistic towards it, which I think happens in sometimes in some circles. We need to be open to it and to different ideas. I mean, I don't know if I agree with the way that we have to go so far as to say with people who just we can't even have a conversation with. But you know what? I respect that he's doing that, and it's important that we have people like him doing that.
Well, when we don't talk about these things, we just secede the argument, and it sounds like only one side is fighting for it. And that's not necessarily true at all. There are a lot of Christians that fall in as Democrats. I mean, most politicians say that they are Christian, even the Democratic side, but they don't necessarily bring up Christ a lot when they're out there talking to the voters.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you don't have the conversation, right? Like, obviously, you won't have a conversation with everybody you can, but I'm just saying there's and I think it is a small segment out there still, even though it gets a lot of of the air just because it's so loud, and one of them is the president. But there's a belief out there where the other person is just so evil. Yeah, in terms of they otherize the other person and can't even humanize people anymore. I don't know how you have a conversation about that and have them influence policy in some way. I think you just need to shut that out somehow because it doesn't help anything, and there are other motivations at play. But again, it's not something that you can just do that to, I know, on a practical level, especially in rural areas. And that's why you're absolutely right. It's a big tent idea. It's people like Wade, people like Ken, people like you getting involved. And
you said that, demonizing other people. We could have been talking about Christianity. We could have been talking about immigration with the comment that you just said. And that's what they're doing. And I think we got to ask our old friend Atticus Finch here, right? English teacher, plugging it right here, that you got to walk in someone else's shoes for a while to really learn who they are. And I think when we don't allow empathy, when we don't consider other people and what they've gone through, we forget that they are human just like us. And when Wade was telling those stories about the immigrants and what they went through before they came here, I think voters need to hear those stories. I think voters need to meet those people. That's what I really think. They need to meet those people one-on-one to know that they are real life and that's what they went through. And you can start feeling that empathy. And when you bring that empathy back into your life, you can start to understand why they went through the things they did do and why they're doing that and why they're voting the way they are.
Well, I mean, I think, the gay rights movement's a great example of that, actually, where,
yes,
a lot of people came out and, you can't tell on the face of it if someone's gay necessarily. You can always tell if someone's black or Hispanic or another race.
I don't see color.
Yes, of course you don't. But, I mean, it's easy to otherize that then, right? If they speak a different language and you can just sort of say, this person's kind of alien to me and I can sort of put them in a box. But when it's your cousin or your brother or your father or your son or daughter or aunt, whoever it is that comes out as gay, which, is happening so much over the past couple decades, then that's harder to ignore because you already have that built-in empathy for that person. And then you feel even stronger. So I mean, if we could do that, to these types of situations, it would be incredible. But that's so difficult because people obviously like to put themselves in their own bubbles in their own communities and don't necessarily like to make themselves uncomfortable. But being uncomfortable is a good thing, right? People should be uncomfortable when they're talking about hard issues and topics. It's just that people don't like it.
Well, I'm gonna jump back to 2016, right? I was
please wait before the election, because I will happily go back to that.
It was before the election. I don't remember if I've talked about this before, but I'm going to bring it up again. I was volunteering for the Clinton campaign, and I had a list of people whose doors I was supposed to knock on, and I was only supposed to knock on registered Democrats' doors. I wasn't supposed to engage anybody else. The idea was that they won't talk to you, they will never listen to you, they will never understand you. Don't bother. Is this Cliff Notes version of what I was told and why I was only knocking on Democrats' doors. If you get the Obama voters, we will win. Who cares about the rest? And I don't know if that was a national idea or a local idea from the person that was working here in the office. But, that's a terrifying idea that we can't talk to each other, and we shouldn't talk to each other. We need to meet each other. We need to express our different ideas. We need to walk away saying, I disagree with you, but it was nice to meet you.
Well, I think so. I agree that we should, but can we? I don't know if we can.
Yes, 100% we can.
Yes, the majority of people can, but there is a segment of people out there that I don't know if you can have that conversation with anymore. It's just
okay. That holds up for the left and the right. There are people on the far spectrum that just can't listen to anybody else. But the vast majority of people you can connect with, and maybe they don't agree with you. Okay,
yeah, that's fine.
Doesn't mean that you have to be, uncivil towards each other. And
of course,
I think if we are uncivil towards each other or we avoid each other, there is no way that we're ever going to make that connection to bring anybody back.
You're right, and I mean it is about having that conversation and finding those people who think that way. Because they probably shy away from politics at this stage and how it is, right?
But maybe it's not even about bringing them back, because maybe you can't bring people back. Maybe it's too far polar. A lot of what happened in 2016 was people stayed home because it was so ugly, because they didn't like their neighbors arguing, so they didn't want to participate in the conversation. So maybe just being civil allows somebody else in the room to hear you that doesn't feel that way, and they may not speak up, but they come out and they vote then.
Yeah, that's really what we need to do at the end of the day.
Well, that's our show for today. I want to thank Wade Munday for coming on the show. If you live in Tennessee's 25th Senate District, get out there, help him win, just like so many of the candidates that we talk to. They need your help. We are getting close to the finish line here. To listen to all of our episodes, go to bluewavepod.com. And as always, you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter at Blue Wave Pod.